Uwaga! Materiał, którego właśnie słuchasz, ma charakter wyłącznie rozrywkowy i informacyjny. Nie stanowi porady medycznej, ani nie zachęca do stosowania jakichkolwiek substancji. Wszystkie działania podejmujesz na własną odpowiedzialność, a autorzy podcastu nie ponoszą odpowiedzialności za skutki wykorzystania tych treści w praktyce. Jeśli temat jest dla Ciebie rażący, śmiało wyłącz, ale subskrypcję możesz zostawić. Hello guys and welcome in another English podcast. My guest today is Jason Theobald. Hello, sir.
How you doing?
I'm really good, like I said like a couple of minutes ago. But last time most people probably remember because your episode with you was one of the biggest one on probably on professional muscle. Most of the guys are was really happy that we finally get together, and I ask you a lot of questions. That was probably the most interesting one because you're the first coach who are actually talking a little bit more about the peptides and all of the new stuff that is coming out. So we're probably going to talk about
Yep.
it a little bit more today because today's topic is actually transition into the uh, contest prep and then the peak week and all of the fun stuff that all of the bodybuilders love the most when it comes to the bodybuilding. For those guys who are not watched episode number one, we are talking about the off season, and this episode probably is going to be needed just to get let's even a clue what we are talking about, just because we are still going to talk uh, in a frame of guy who's around two, 220 to 30 pounds, something like that. We are both work together for my whole off season. So I was just finished my prep last time. I just signed with you for my off season. We get through all of the off season and what to do right now. So how do you like to approach the transition from the off season to the contest prep and all the pre-prep, like of the coaches like to set when it comes to the guys like me? First, we talk about do you do something like a deload week or maybe something like a health phase before
Yep.
we
Yep.
start the contest prep?
Yep.
Just get me close to that.
Let's talk into that. Usually what I do is I like you to kind of come down off your PEDS for about 8 weeks. That doesn't mean off, but just come down to a cruise. I don't like to be on a 16-week blast and then go into a 16-week contest prep. That's what 36 weeks of high dose PEDS. For me, that just seems reckless. Maybe other people do that, but I don't. So there's going to be an 8 week period. So we're going to really plan this out. We're going to know we're going to have this 8 week cruise built in. We're going to bring gear down. Maybe the last 3 weeks of that, we might pull back training to RPEs of nines, eights, just so we're making sure we get rid of all the niggles, all the nagging issues, ligaments, joints, tendons, everything's good. So we really should be set up to then hit it hard. And, that's when guys prep. I mean, it's a risk versus reward. And that's when the PEDs really go up for me. And that's when we pretty much put and use anything. And the higher your aspirations are and the more you want to be a pro and all that, we're pretty much open to any PED there is to get the job done. So that's how I set it up and set the stage. Do you want me to go ahead and keep going further, or do you want to ask me a question before I go
Yeah,
into?
I'm gonna probably ask you a question one by one because I wanted to have it like a more like a structure because I know when the coaches starts to talk, they are all over the place because it's so personal dependent that it's really hard to structure it for a single person, especially when you're talking about most of the people out there because it's really hard to do that. But first of all, I wanted to ask you because you says that you wanted to pull back from the PDs. Uh, the percentage wise, how big of the pool it's gonna be? Let's say I was around 1500 mix of total gear a week. So how much do you like to pull it down?
This is actually a little bit person dependent, and I start to learn this as I get to be with a client. Some of my bodybuilders, like you can really pull them down pretty far to 200 mgs, 2 IUs of GH, pull their slant, and they don't lose much muscle. I have a few guys that are straight up ectomorphs, and we got to keep them a little closer to 4 or 500. Now, these are pros, right? So they know the risks, but they understand you get down to 200, they lose too much, and then it's kind of like we've taken 2 steps back. So, it kind of depends. I guess they're probably going to be around 400 mgs to 200 mgs a test, somewhere around there, anywhere from 2 to 4 IUs of GH. I'd love to get it as low as possible, but we have to battle keeping the muscle and not having them deflate as we're going right into contest prep. So it's going to depend. I usually pull insulin, let receptors reset. I do use it a little bit in contest prep, and we'll talk about that. So I usually pull that out, get the GH as low as I can without taking steps backward. We can talk about nutrition, but just the over arc. This is when I start, and I think I talked about this in the last episode. I look at in the health phase, I look at the blood glucose, and I watch it during too. But like, I really want to make sure that we're in a good spot, insulin sensitivity wise. So if you're hitting me numbers 2.5 hours after eating in the 80s, we're good. I can keep your food right where it's at, and we'll just monitor it through the health phase. If you're giving me numbers that are 100, I'm going to have to pull back on some of these carbs right now and get you sensitive, or else we're going to spend the first 4 weeks of prep not wondering why you're not dropping the way you should be. And it's because your insulin sensitivities are shit. So usually I don't let this get out of range. We use different peptides, retatrutide, different things, but it can. So during this phase, I love to keep nutrition as high as possible. If I have to pull down, this is when I'll pull down to reset. And these when coaches need to be checking things going into that contest prep, because if insulin sensitivity isn't optimal, I've fallen into that trap years and years ago when I was a new coach. Why is this person not dropping? And then you check their blood glucose and it's shit. And now you're wasting, 4 weeks of prep and your calories are super low, and now you got to grind hard. So that's what I'm doing and setting up with the diet and everything else coming into prep.
So one more question in regards to that, because you says that you like to pull the labs. Is that based on the on the blood works, or structure, or you structure that no matter how the blood works looking like? But because, for
When
example,
you
if
said
my blood
pull the what? What was the word you said? Pull the.
PDs, PDs,
Oh,
PDs,
okay. Yeah.
PDs. Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Because some guys are perfectly okay. So let's test that. My NYC is perfect. My lipids are somewhat perfect. Probably HDL is going to be a little bit lower, but who cares about the HDL? My LDL is really low. And everything is basically my hematocrit is fine. My complete blood panel is really good, and everything is good. The ferritin is on a good level. The CRP is on a good level. Homocysteine is on a good level. Apoprotein B is on a good level, and everything is cystatin C is good. Every health marker is pretty much great. Do you still gonna pull me down just
Me
for
personally,
insurance?
yes. Me personally, yes. Because just because they're good now doesn't mean they're going to continue to stay good forever if you're blasting the shit out of your body with androgens. So yes, I'm going to pull it back. Now, if the guy goes, my lipids, everything's great, like you just ran down, I don't want to do that. Okay, cool. Let's have that discussion. You realize you're going to be having high ped usage for 36 to 40 weeks. Now we're adding things like tren, orals. Before we had retatrutide and sloop, we were adding clen. If you want to take that risk, I'm cool to walk you through it. But my opinion is you're not going to gain that much in 8 weeks staying high ped. And in fact, I think pulling down some, you're going to get more of a slingshot into the show if we pull back a bit, really get healthy, and then go. But I'll have that conversation. But generally speaking, yeah, my advice is going to be pull that back for 8 weeks. We'll ramp up, but we're going to monitor it. I'm not going to deflate you. That's why I said, the testosterone might go anywhere from 400 or 500 to 200, depending on knowing the person. But it's a conversation to have. But yes, my advice would be to pull down for 8 weeks.
Great. Okay. That was just something that was more like I was just I want to know
Yeah.
that. Yeah. So let's say that we start in the competition prep. For at the beginning, I would love to know how much time you like to set for that period with your guys, because every coach probably likes to have some time in like a spur if in case of some illness or anything that's may happen during the contest prep. So how much time? 8 weeks, 12 weeks, 16 weeks, 20 weeks,
So
some coaches 25 weeks.
I'm going to keep my guys in a pretty lean range. Usually, we have PEDS in play. We have a lot of cool things now. Usually, they're going to be about a 12-week out from being shredded. That's where I try to keep my guys. Now, I'm going to ask for 16 weeks. If we're ready earlier and there's a show they want to hop in, cool. I'm no problem with that. But I'm usually going to ask for 16, but I usually keep my guys within 12. Some of them are I can ready in 8, to be honest with you. But somewhere around there. So the answer is it kind of depends. And then you do have some of those outliers who stay really shredded and get ready in 6 weeks. And you have some of those guys, you do everything you can, and they're just so endomorphic that they've always got a little bit too much on the kidney or something, and you're going to need more time. So the answer is it depends. But generally speaking, I keep my guy 12 weeks out, and I usually ask for about 16. Once I get to really know the person, like Alex Mitch just did 212 in Tampa. He can be ready in 12 weeks, and I know he can. So we just do 12 weeks. But if I'm not knowing the person, it's our first go, I'm probably going to ask for 16.
Okay, great. So, how's the training is gonna change if gonna change at all?
Good question. So we had just kind of pulled back, probably down to 4 days. RPE has been pulled back, so we're not going through to failure. Once we ramp into show, food's either going to be high or we're going to put it back up high. So you should be ready to train. You should be ready to train. So PEDs are in. I'm going to know my guy. Like some guys are going to grow best on 5, some guys are going to grow best on 4, but the intensity is going to go up. We're going to make sure we're taking everything to failure. Usually, at least only the third set, usually like a working set. We're going to be taking to failure. We're going to be looking to grow because you should be lean enough and that we can grow for at least that first 4, 6 weeks in. So training's ramped up. Everything's full go now on training. Um, but it depends on how many days with some guys. I honestly do better with 4, even in prep. I don't have a trouble getting shredded. I seem to grow better with that little bit of rest. Maybe it's age, maybe it's being ectomorph. I don't know. Some guys need that extra day and seem to grow better with the volume up. I'm gonna base it on you. If I've never prepped you, it's probably gonna be 5 days until I figure out otherwise. With that third set, that working set being taking to failure right now because everything's a go. Peds are up, training's up, food's up. Let's build.
Okay. So how do you like to cut the calories? Because some guys are cutting in like a huge calorie deficit right away, and they probably gonna a little bit like adjust it, watching how the guy's changing. Some people do like to do it really slowly. For example, just couple
Yep.
hundred calories and maybe a slightly increase of the cardio. How do you like to set it up?
So, you know, again, this comes down to how lean they are and how aggressive I think they have to be out right away. Let's assume that their insulin sensitivity is great. If it is, you don't need huge pulls. 60 carbs, 70 might get it done. Now, if their insulin sensitivity shit, there's times I'll go really hard deficit for 2 weeks to reset it. Let's say a guy comes to me and I don't have him for off season. He just wants me prep. I check his blood sugars right away. If they're 100, that first 2 weeks, you're going to starve. I'm going to get that down fast, and then we're going to build back up. But assuming in our scenario, you should be in a good spot because I've had my eye on you. So anywhere from 50 to 70 carbs, I'll pull. We'll assess the first week and then go from there. But I don't think you usually need a huge pull. I'm going to be getting your steps up. I like steps. Usually start with 10K, maybe some fasted cardio in that. I like a walk. And then if it shows, you show me that I need to pound on you more, I will. I'll put some hit cardio in while the calories are up. But a little bit of cardio bump, a little bit more steps, pull down the food, 50 to 70 carbs. That usually elicits a pretty good response, assuming that sensitivity is where it should be. And in our example, it will be.
Okay, great. So, how's the PED is going to change in the contest prep and when?
Mhm.
Because some coaches are just leaving it like it was in EF season for almost whole prep and maybe adjust it a little bit at the end. Some people like to switch it up right away. What's your opinion about that?
Yeah. So, we'll have already had a conversation about what you feel like you respond best to and what will be issues. That said, My older guys, I'm generally going to use more test, mass, primo, things like that. Younger guys, I don't mind bringing in something like an EQ, a MPP early for the cell volumization. RBCs are going to go sky high, performance, all those things. But it's going to be higher than usually off season for me. We're trying to keep that tissue. That's just me. I know some coaches do the opposite. They go higher in off season,
Yeah.
lower. But I generally have it a little bit higher in prep. I was always just taught take the least amount off season and then prep, no holds barred. If you're going to bodybuild, you're going to bodybuild and go for it. Um, so yeah, those are the types that I start with. I don't start with any orals. Um, do you want me to get into like peptides, fat burners, or just
Yeah,
straight to?
if you use it,
Yep.
just tell me what
Okay.
to do,
Lay it
okay? It's
out.
probably going to be most honest answer.
Okay, so we'll lay it out. So I like to time. So I'm always going to use some fasted cardio, but right off the rip, I just use like walking, just walking, usually 30 minutes. And what I like to do is I'll get you out of bed. You'll hit your retatrutide. I like to take it daily. So let's say your dose is a milligram to start. We'll divide that up over 7 days. Have that. I'm gonna get you some L-carn. If you want to inject it, great. If not, my company makes a liposomal. We're gonna hit a tablespoon of that, or either 600 mgs injectable. Um, Usually I would hit clean, but nowadays I think with the Retta and the Sloop, we're going to use some Sloop, anywhere from 500 mics to a MIG. Um, with that stack. And then if you tolerate it okay, I usually like to put in 1 IU of Humalog. It's going to clear out the blood sugars and get you into fat burning very quickly. Now, some guys, it takes them hypo. Once we learn that, that's not going to be a good strategy for them. It doesn't do that to me and a lot of guys who are a little bit older who aren't as sensitive. The guys 30 and under, it might put them a little hypo, and then it's just not a strategy we use. So it depends on the person. But if you're like me and need a little bit of extra clearance, it'll drive those blood sugars down, and now you're into fat burn a lot quicker. So I time those, and then of course some GH. We're gonna hit at least 2 to 3 IU's with that stack and get right into the walking. And I usually ask you to walk like a 3 speed, 3 incline. Your heart rate might get to 110, 120, nothing too intense. And do about 30 minutes. And then we'll usually track about 10,000 steps to start. And that is included in that. So that's part of the fat burning stack. And then usually pre-workout, I'm gonna have you. Well, let me give you some doses before I get into that. So the general stack. Uh, how old's the guy that we're doing? Is it
30 years
you?
old. 30 years
30?
old.
Yeah.
That's me. I'm 31, 30 years old. Yeah.
So yeah. So I'm generally gonna put in something like some test, some EQ, um, and maybe a little mass, something like that, as the main stack to start. And then pre-workout, we'll hit another bit of, I like some more GH pre with a little bit of insulin. I don't go too crazy here. I find too much, a guy seems to potentially burn store fat, but anywhere from like 2, 3, 4 IU's. Most guys burn fat better with it. So I'll have that pre. We'll do a little bit of intra carb, carbolin, cyclic dextrins, whatever you like. And then post workout, I'll usually have another 2, 3 IU's of GH. So we're somewhere around 8 to 10. I know you like to run 20. Me personally, I don't usually get that high. So it's just not something that's generally in my protocol. I'm usually around 8 to 10 with my guys that are more advanced. So that's why I'm saying, 2 to 3 in the morning, 2 to 3 pre, 2 to 3 post, and that's kind of got you your 8 to 9, 6 to 9 on your GH. Um, I do like another hit of Sloop as well, pre-workout with that insulin and that GH. And that seems to burn nice too and get you another little extra fat burn there. If you want to throw another IU in pre-bed, you can. I know some coaches really love a big dose pre-bed. I like it around the workout. For me personally, I feel it. I get a better pump. I get a better connection with the muscle. So that's the way I do it with my guys, plain and simple. Um, that insulin with it, the carbs with it, you're going to get a nice response to the muscle. And I want to keep that round and full as long as we can. So that's generally where it's going to start. Testosterone, a guy, I think we said he was 220. It's probably going to be 600, 750 mgs. EQ, probably 600 mgs. Primo or mass, maybe about 300. And that's where we'll start most everything. I generally don't use clean much anymore unless a guy needs it. I'm not a big fan of T3 unless I find out you need it. I find it with Retta. I find with Sloop. I find with GH. All these things, you're just not needing them as much anymore, which is a great thing. It keeps stress down, keeps you sleeping better. and all that. And then there's gonna be some peptides, but we can stop there because I think you were raising your hand.
Yeah, I was raising my hand because I was telling you that was to 220, 230 coming off the stage. But remember, we are doing the whole off season, so probably I'm around 260 to 70 because we are wanted to switching the class. So that's probably have to be adjusted with the PEDs use. But it's gonna be a minor changes to be honest. But let's if I can. I wanted to ask you about the two things about the slew and the dosages of it, just because I'm right now using it and
Yep.
trying it myself for the first time. And I wanted to know how do you like to spread it out? Because some guys are spreading out in the three doses, for example, morning, midday, and at night.
Yep.
And some guys are just doing it in the morning, some guys just doing it right before the training. But the first question is because no one really knows what's the half-life of it, like a real one, the half-life. So how do you like how close to the dose or how far you like to spread it out, minimum? And then do you like to spread it out on the three doses or two doses? Do you like to do it pre-bed? Because I find that it's kind of raised my heart rate during the night,
Yep.
which is normal because it's exercise mimetic, so it's gonna do that. But maybe that's something that you don't like to mess with. So this is why I ask.
So I like it morning, timed with that stack I gave, and then I like it pre-workout. I don't like it past 6 o'clock. It keeps me awake. I'm hot, and my heart rate is up. So I generally just do pre-work, pre-list, pre-training. So 2 times a day. I think bare minimum you want a MIG, so 500 mics, 500 mics. There's guys working up to a MIG and a MIG. Um, the guy in the example is 260. He might need a MIG and a MIG for optimal. But the price starts to get a little, there's companies now starting to, do it at the MIG level. And so it's a little bit more affordable. When it first came out, shit, if you did 500 mics a day, you were burning through it. So, but I think we're starting to see that the MIG, at least a day, is kind of the minimal dose to really see the results. So if a guy's on a budget, 500, 500, we'll hit that MIG. If he can go a MIG and a MIG and needs it, we'll do that as well. But I like it morning and I like it pre-workout. I wouldn't go past 6 p.m. I think it's going to affect your sleep, and I'm big on sleep and prep. It's going to always help you, recover and burn fat better. So,
Okay, I didn't know that yet that it's impact my sleep, even though it's raising up my heart rate. Because I've seen it on the Aura ring that I'm waking up with a slightly higher heart rate during the night, but it seems to not disrupt my sleep, so I'm fine with that. But the next question is going to be GH because GH is some like it is really hard to tell actually what would be the proper dose because all of the labs that we have right now the exams that they do on the GH is tends to prone to use it during the night, especially that it's actually that something that is curious for me because we both knows that intramuscular GH is going to peak around 2 3 hours when it comes to the IGF. Like signaling and IGF release, like effects in intra like sub Q is going to be about around 3 to 4 hours. So it seems like it is has no effects doing it in the morning when it comes to the fat burning. But the question is, if the part of that amino acids, that's depending on the lipolysis, it is active still, injected it right now, and it really helps because the studies are not shown that they actually all of the studies says that it's probably the best way to use it is the huge bolus right before the bed because you probably your free fatty acids going to be released during the night and you can burn through it in the morning when you're doing the fasted cardio. So this is why, and it's gonna impact your insulin level during the day a little bit less than spread it out throughout the days, and especially with the meals. Although the meals might resynthesize your receptors for the IGF, so that's might help a little bit because it is gonna like it is at the synthesized period around 5 hours after the injection. You're basically resist from the like another peak of the IGF during the administration too close to each other. So what's your like approach about that? Because you like to split it. Do you believe that it helps to burn a little bit more fats that way, or why is that?
Yeah. So, I always say there's some things in research that are awesome, but I see better than I read. And so my results for years of doing it, I've tried both ways. And for me, I always felt number one, no matter what the research says, if I took 3, 4 GH pre-training, I got a better pump. So, if it says it takes 4 hours, it says it takes 4 hours, but I know what I see and I know what I feel. And so I've gone by what I see more than what I've read. And there's things like that, like fasted cardio. For years, people would put out reports. It doesn't work as good. You can do your cardio whenever. I tried all that shit. I got leaner faster doing the goddamn morning fasted cardio. So I just shut up about it and stopped arguing with people about it because I saw what I saw and I read what I read and I
Yeah,
went with what I saw. So I don't know. I'll literally say I don't know, but I just go by what I see. And conditioning is not normally a problem of mine or my athletes, so it must work. So
yeah. I have to ask, even though I'm pretty much the same as you, because everyone knows that I am a fucking bro when it comes to that, and actually, I read all of how do you say it? Labs? No labs.
research
Is
papers,
the
all
papers? Yeah, the papers, all the papers and stuff like that. And I've always just I take it into the consideration, but it's not something that I'm based on. But I'm still try to sometimes use it on myself and try to uh, try it out. Maybe it really works. But do you think that maybe it's because you combine the GH with the insulin that you feel that
it
effect,
could, but I
or
take
you
it insulin
try?
by itself, and I don't get
Oh,
the same response. When you take that GH and insulin together, the cell swelling is amazing. I mean, you can see a guy that morning and then see him in the gym. And it looks like he morphed.
yeah,
It needs both. I don't know. It's just one of those things. I've tried it. I like to play around with things, so I've tried it all, and
yeah,
that just seems to be what's worked for me and my clients. So I just stick with it. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Um, I'm not saying I'm right. A lot of this is, what you see in the trenches and what you feel has worked for you. So that's just one of those things where I go against the research, I guess.
Yeah, me too. Especially when it comes to the fasted cardio, because everyone knows, especially on the forum, that I am a huge. I I'm like almost like Milos Sarcev. I believe in those fat burning, muscle building periods during the day and stuff like that. I still follow the carbohydrate rotation, and I have the days when I have less than 50 grams of carbs, and days when I have almost 800 grams of carbs, and I use insulin with IGF sometimes with GH and stuff like that. I'm using sometimes stuff like orals around the workout just to elevate those short periods of times when I have the elevated like nitro oxide level in my blood and stuff like that. So I've believed in all of that, and I believe that I seen the results
Right.
that it gave, even though not a single paper is going to cover that and says that's I'm right. But I am with you when it comes to that. But I have to ask because there are guys who need to know that. So. GH, do you like to increase it a little bit more in the contest prep because of the lipolytic effects, or you like to keep it constant throughout the year?
I'm a guy who generally is going to use more in the prep. Now, that said, the if we go back to the example you gave me, the guy wanted to change a weight class. And so I was more aggressive on the GH because of that. Um, but I don't always do that. Like, there's ramifications. Some guys their insulin sensitivity is gonna go to shit. Now we've got retatrutide, so we can jack that up and cover it. But not every. I mean, if I took 20 IU's of GH, I can tell you right now, my blood sugars would be horrific. I'd probably need 5, 6, 7, 8 mgs of Retta. Maybe that's my age. My mother's close to being a type 2. My grandmother was. So I'm a little less liberal with the GH in the off season than I am with contest prep. With contest prep, I love to see it get up to 10. And I know in the example, you're like, nah, 20. But for me, 10, I think it's a pretty high dose, and I think you get a lot done with 10. So that's kind of my ceiling usually. But I usually hit it with my guys, my seasoned guys who are looking to, go pro or be high level national level. So
Yeah, I just wanted to say that that 20 I used was just the one time I was trying it
got
for
it.
the first time in my life. So it's not like I'm following the 20 I use year round. I'm year round. I'm on 10 I use. That's not
Okay.
that almost no never changed. But the 20 I use, I was trying for at least 6 weeks, I think. And to be honest, my insulin sensitivity even improved because I increased a little bit of cardio. I added HIIT sessions 4 times a week, and
Uh,
I was actually on retatrutide
okay.
because I incorporated. So
What
yeah.
dose
So
did Retta did you need to combat it?
I started first. I started with trizapeptide.
Yep. Yep.
No, I first started with retatrutide, but on the 2 milligram dose, it's not even suppressed my appetite 1%. Not at all. Not
Wow.
even feel it. Not at
Okay.
all. So then I tried the trizapeptide, and it suppressed my appetite a bit on the two I use. But then I add 1.5, I think I use of Reda to that. So that was
Okay.
3.5 I use of GLP-1. And right now I on 3.5 weekly, but this is just 25 and 20, 0.25 and 0.25 Reda and trizapeptide together because I retatrutide seems to not suppress my appetite at all. It's just not working my appetite at
Got it.
all. So this is why I combine those two. But other than that, that's probably most the diet changes because I was on deficits and I increased a lot. The steps counts are doing around 14 to 1600 steps a day plus doing the cardio and plus doing the training plus doing the hits. So that's why. Okay, so what's the best time to incorporate the fat burners like Klein, Joachim Biden, GH fragment, and all of the shits that we talked
Yeah. Yeah. If we're
previously?
gonna use it, like I said, I don't even go to it right away anymore because of how good Retta and GH and Sloop is. But if we're gonna use Clint, I'm always gonna start with just a morning dose before your fasted cardio, usually 20 mics. And man, I'm gonna ride that. I know there's coaches that like to bump it every 2 weeks. I'm gonna ride that until I see that I need more because Clen is, there's some research that's tough on the heart. It's going to affect sleep potentially in some people. It's going to push cortisol potentially higher. It's going to distress the adrenals. So if I can get away with 20, that's where I'm going to get away with it at. But I generally would put it that pre-fasted with that stack I gave. And then I would, if I do have to add another dose, it's going to go pre-workout with that other, GH and Sloop and a little bit of insulin. That's where I'm going to put it. I'm going to try to have you done no later than 2 p.m. If you're a guy who's got an office job and you can't train until 6 p.m., I might put your clin in at 2 still, anyways, just so you're not going home and you can't get rest. Rest is so important. I'm not going to do anything to try to jeopardize that. So, that's where I fall on the clin. Yohimbine, I personally can't take it. It crazy makes me anxious as hell. I do like it. Um, if you're going to take it, it works best in a fasted environment. So morning bolus dosing, I think, is the best. You can take a little bit pre-workout, but then really you shouldn't have eaten for about 2 to 3 hours to let that insulin come back down. Now, because we are using a little insulin, if you time it with that, that's gonna potentially blunt it. So, I generally would say for most guys, just take your bolus dose in the morning, pre-fasted list with the stack we had. Even 5 mgs lights me up, so I just don't use it. But most people do find dosing it all the way up to a milligram per 10 pounds. So technically, the guy in the video or in the example could do 27 mgs. That's a lot. He doesn't need all that. I'd start with 5 mg and see where he's at. Um, and then the other fat burner, you said frag. I don't use it a much because we're on GH. I just don't think it's necessary and it's an added expense. So it's not something I really use. Same with like AOD and all those things. I don't really throw it in. If a guy wants to add it, I would have it morning with the stack and probably pre-workout. And maybe even at bed with those peptides, time them up in those areas. But I generally am not throwing more cash at those. If anything, I'd rather just see you up your GH, to be honest with you.
Okay. Yeah, I when you talk like that, I feel like a junkie because I use 35 milligrams of yohimbine and feel nothing.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm really like um resist to all of the shit. And sometimes I even wonder if maybe my junk is just faked. But then my clients use it and they took like 5 milligrams and they getting green and
Yeah, I
almost
can't.
puke and almost die. So
Yeah,
this is
I can't
something
take.
that's crazy. I've got a client. I was on a 3.5 milligrams of GLP and feel basically nothing. And I got client who was on 0.25 and vomiting.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah, that was crazy. So I don't know why, but basically I just feel almost nothing. To be honest, I never felt even a gear. Sometimes if guys talking about feeling tremble on or something like that, I never felt that. Never felt that. Never. I feel nothing being on testosterone. I feel nothing being on nandrolone. I feel nothing being on masteron, on
Yeah,
on
all those.
Sandron, on I don't think Howell testing. I don't think Superdrill. I just can't feel it. Maybe like I feel that I am maybe like more pumped and I feel the like
Don't get the negatives, it sounds like.
yeah, but I don't feel the side effects
That's good.
anymore.
I mean,
Not at
because
all.
it's
Especially yeah, back in the days I was sweating a lot, but right now I know that wasn't the trend. That was just a low estrogen because I was on a ton of AIs because of
nice.
my previous coach who liked to use it. So not Lucky for those who well listen, the coach back in the days. But that was the reason because low estrogen is gonna make you sweat a lot. So for those guys who are on a prep and sweating as probably you don't have to use a lot of those AIs. But yeah, when it comes to the clenbuterol, I don't think that no one should use more than 30 to 60 mix to be honest, because I love clenbuterol to be honest, but I think that those days where people are using 100, 200 mix, like micrograms and stuff like that, that was a crazy period of time in the bodybuilding. That was something that I'm glad that not many people died back then because that was crazy. Do you like to utilize something like SR 10, 9, 11 and stuff like that, or you don't use it at all?
What's that one?
SR is I don't know
Oh,
how it's yeah, SR
um,
9, 10, 11 or something like that. 10, 9,
yeah.
11.
I don't use any of that. Every once in a while, I'd use some Cardarine, which
Yeah,
is a
Cardarine. I love to use it year round
yeah. So
for those
I've been
PPRR
using that.
activations.
Yeah, for like about 20 mgs a week, and I'd have them do it or a day, and I would have them do it in the morning with their stack before they hit cardio. Um, it can improve cholesterol, and obviously it's an anti-inflammatory, and it's got some fat-burning properties. So it's not a bad one to add in. I actually used it in my Tampa Pro prep last year. I thought it was nice. So I do use that one. But the SR9, I know what you're talking about. That's it has
Yeah.
anti-inflammatory benefits as well. I don't really use it much. I go with Cardarine over it. I believe it has a little bit more fat burning. But yeah, if someone's got the budget, I would definitely use some Cardarine. I see no problem with it. There's one study where they gave a shit ton to rats and it caused a little cancer. But I mean, the dose on that was pretty high compared to what, I just say 15, 20 mgs. I see guys taking more. They're probably fine in a short period of time. I've got results from 15 to 20, and that's usually where I dose it with people.
Yeah, me too. Recently, they said that up to 30 milligrams a day is safe for the people use. So I think it's rational, especially for those PPRR receptor agonists, because it's gonna definitely keeps your lipids in check throughout the year. And I saw that on my labs personally. So I like to use it year round, even though it's theoretically a fat burner and something that helps with your fitness. I think year round is good application for that. So. How about the diet changes in the prep? You like to cut the carbs first, or fat first, or maybe you what do you do with
Yeah.
protein? Because I know some coaches like to at the end of the prep decrease the protein and increase the carbs because of potential more like a muscle retention.
Statystyki podpowiadają mi, że duża część osób oglądających ten kanał wciąż go nie subskrybuje. Dlatego jeżeli należysz do tego grona, zasubskrybuj już teraz oraz wpadaj na naszego Discorda. Link znajdziesz w opisie tego filmu. Zapraszam Cię również do wspierania ruchu Zapierdalać Trzeba poprzez zakupywanie merchu oraz szerowanie, udostępnianie i lajkowanie. Wielkie dzięki i wracamy do materiału.
So, generally speaking, I'm not going to mess with the protein right off of off season, unless there are some guys that you got to get into absurd amounts. So then I might bring it down to like 1.5 times their body weight. But generally speaking, I won't touch it. In fats, I'll bring those down. Like, so, if it was a big, guys 260, I think we had his fats at least over 100. I'm going to bring those down probably to 70 right off the rip. And they might even need to go to 60. And then as we get closer to the show, they might need to go lower in order to pull the fat off the really stubborn body parts. But I'm going to bring that down. And then the carbs, like I said, 60 to 70 to start. We'd probably pull there. So fats, I'm going to get to an area where I feel like fat burning is going to be more efficient. And then generally, I'm going to hold there and then just toggle the carbs down as we go. There are times late in prep, though I do like to lower protein and then up the carb again. So let's say you've got, I don't know, he's 270, so we had at least 350 grams of protein. He's down now to 200 carb. If we need to get there, 70 fat. I might pull 60 out of the protein for a bit and then put it back into carb. And usually you see an uptick into their thyroid and they'll actually start dropping again. So I might play with those types of things, but that's an on as needed basis. That is not like a rule set. Like I am going to do this. I mean, I'll be honest with you with Retta and the setup we have, most guys just zoom. I mean, it's pretty seamless anymore.
Yeah.
If you know what you're doing with these pads and these compounds, you don't need as much hit cardio anymore. You don't need, I mean, the work's got to be done, but you can get someone in with way less cortisol spikes. Their sleep should be good throughout. Generally I'm adjusting the carbs mainly. And, we didn't say, but I usually just have like a training, a non-training, and a refeed day. And the leaner the guy is, the earlier he earns his refeed. So like if you start and you're 8% already, you're gonna get a refeed right off the bat. If you start and you're 12, 15%, you might not get a refeed right away. You don't need it. Let's pull off that body fat. But the refeed, is going to retool the metabolism a bit. It's also going to fill you out. It's gonna, help ghrelin and leptin signaling, and then of course, it's gonna have that metabolic effect for it. But if you're got enough body fat, you can just pull from that. So that's going to depend on how lean you are at the start. So sometimes no refeed right away, sometimes refeed right away. Generally, I'm going to start at a training and non-training. I've played around with, three, lows, highs, mediums, and toggling them. I think it all gets confusing as fuck and it's not needed. I just like a training day, non-training day, refeed or not once a week. And if you get really peeled and we got to hold for a few shows, then you might get two refeeds a week. But there's no set rules for me, but generally protein stays the same. Fat's got to come down to a better area to burn fat, and then I adjust the carbs as you check in weekly.
Okay, you skipped to the cheat meals and refits, so so that's good. Okay, so do you like to do more cardio with your guys and more food, or just less food in general and less cardio?
So generally speaking, I like a little more food and a little more movement. I think you can get a lot done with just steps. It's low impact. It's not going to hurt the legs. So, I like to see, start at 10. I like to get up to 12, 13,000 steps. Um, and then if I have to add, actual miss cardio where we're getting the heart rate up to 130s, 140s, or even some hit 150s, 160s, I will do it. But if you're zooming along, I would rather see you move and eat a little bit more than less movement and eating less. Because remember, if we can get more food in you, that training response is going to stay. I hate when my guys keep checking in and they're getting no training response. It's okay to be flat throughout the day, but I want you to still get a pump in training. And with PEDS and all these things we have set up, you really should be. And if you're not, then we got to talk about that. Maybe you're overtrained, you're not sleeping well. But I'm a big on I want to see you get round and full and connect with the muscle throughout this prep. I think that brings in the best experience. So I'm a big fan and believer that those afraid to go flat show up fat. I honestly will use that moniker all the time, but I strive to make sure that you're feeling your training. And so I would rather you move a little more and get a little more food. And that's my theory behind it.
Okay, okay. So I think we get through the whole contest prep, and I think right now I am ready to hit the stage, and I am probably was ready like in your standards 2 weeks earlier probably. So when it comes to the peak week, do you cut the GH before competition, or do you like to leave it in, or maybe depends on the person? Probably will.
Um, so one thing I am going to back up that we didn't talk about, and just going to add it.
Okay.
Usually around 8 weeks, PEDs change. I won't run that first cycle in all the way. Usually trend comes in, usually an oral like Winstrol. Um, Towards the end, I might even put in some why am I blanking? The
Oliver?
DHT, Proviron.
Oliver?
I
Oh,
might put
Provider.
but I might put in some Proviron. And you can
That's
always take that
interesting.
more fast, but I like to sometimes put in Proviron. And usually, and this is where again it kind of goes against what the research says, I think, but I like timing trend daily and actually timing it pre-workout. And I believe it's probably not supposedly in your system enough, but I feel it. In other words, I've done it. My training's more aggressive. I'm stronger. So I like that trend timed pre-workout with that oral. And I just feel it that way. Yeah, if you want to argue that it's not in you quick enough, I get it. I've had the argument. I don't care. I've tried it both ways. It's not just the Winstrol. So I usually time up that trend pre-workout now. Um, and some halo testing at the end if they're a high level guy, maybe 10 MIGs, start at 3 weeks out a day, and then maybe go to 20. I know some guys go up to 30. I don't generally do that. um, so those are just some things that kind of change down the line. I used to pull around 2 weeks, but I'm gonna be honest with you, with retatrutide now, I'm finding you don't have to do that. You guys out there in computer land can play with this, but I'm finding you can leave GH in, and the water is just the retention is not the same because I think you're keeping your blood glucose in such a good range that that little bit of water that you see, I'm not seeing it, or it's so minute that the fullness is so much more important that you're getting over it that it's not really an issue. I know with my last guy, we kept 8 IUs into the show, and he was dry and looked phenomenal, his best look ever. But we were using Retta, so I kept it. But generally speaking, it was 2 weeks out to let the water get off. But I think a lot of that was because it was driving blood glucose up, and that's driving inflammation. And now we're controlling inflammation and blood glucose so well that I think you can leave that in. Now, maybe some guys are going to find that maybe they need to cut it in half, so 5. But I think you can leave some in with retatrutide. That's what I'm finding. You guys play with it out there, but that's what I've been doing, is leaving it in. So I haven't been pulling that. Trend depends on the guy, what he's looking like. Sometimes you can need to pull it. Sometimes you need to pull it down. Other guys just look like a freaking brick statue on it, and I don't touch it. It's just going to depend, and you'll see that when you add it to them. Did they get better, or did they get just a little bit of film? If you think they got a little bit of film, obviously you could try to control the prolactin with like some cabergoline. Not the best thing for you, or you can just decide to pull it down some or out towards the very end. Um, Insulin, I usually kind of leave it roll until we're near the stage. And well, another cool thing I found with retatrutide, you can load with insulin, and you don't have to worry about that water look as much. Usually after you take insulin, at least 3 to 4 hours, I notice water. So a lot of times when I would load my guys, I would just do it like the first two meals on like a Friday before the show. Now you can leave it in longer, and they just get harder and they stay dry. These are all things that I've experienced with the Retta being in. Now, part of that I think is because their cortisol is so low. Remember, I don't need as much cardio anymore.
Yeah.
So these guys are getting into the final week. They're super healthy. They're sleeping like babies, and their cortisol is great. So you're not fighting all these old variables that we used to fight. So these are just some things that I've found that have changed my peak week over the last year. And I first noticed it on myself last year when I was one of the first guys using them at a high level for competing. I left my GH in. I was able to add more slim pretty much the whole damn day loading, and I just looked dry and hard. And I was like, huh. And so I was starting to think like, why? And I think it's because cortisol is controlled, and I think it's because your blood glucose just stays perfect. So I'll stop there, and we can kind of dig in wherever you want.
I'll get back because I'm curious about the Proviron use and I'm wondering why
Yep.
you're using it. Any specific reason for that?
You could up Mastron, but I just don't want to take all the oil.
Okay.
I like to get it that way, and so more DHT is going to make it harder when you're that lean. Um, some guys might just jack the Mastron up, but I take shots daily and I try to contain it to as much as I can get into a slim pin. And I just don't want to add more oil. So I just use some DHT, and it's not 17 AA, so it's not taxing the liver really. So I usually use some Proviron. You don't have to, but that's what I do.
Yeah, but it's three dehydrogenase reduced, so it's not actually a DHT per se, but it's gonna lowers your SHBG even lower, so it might potentially yield to a higher level of DHT, especially when the aromatase enzymes is wanted. So maybe it's actually a good approach. Okay, so. Do you cap the test or lower it, or do you leave it
I usually
through?
lower testosterone a bit. I usually lower it a bit.
Okay.
Used to, I would pull it. But like I said, now with Retta, and I find guys just stay drier. I generally leave about 200 mgs in just for a little extra fullness and just to feel good. As that testosterone starts to drop out. And usually at this point in time, about 2, 3 weeks out, I do use summer Arimidex to pull more water off the body. So, if you don't have any testosterone, you're adding Arimidex and you're on Tren and Winstrol and all these things, um, you just aren't going to feel amazing. And so leaving a little test in, I think helps. And I also think we can get away with it now. But used to, I'd pull it. I felt like it benefited the look. But now I think the extra fullness that we get, and we're staying so dry with these other things we can use that I leave some in now.
Oh, I don't have this question here, but should have here. Do you like to switch the esters for the shortened one, or you just leave it the long esters throughout the whole prep?
I just leave it. I used to do all that. I didn't see a ton of benefit, and then usually there's more pip with prop and
Yeah.
acid prop. So I leave mass D and I leave test sip, and then I'm not seeing a big enough difference, man, to really do it. I know that was big in the 90s and early 2000s. I just kind of got away from it and haven't really seen a negative to it. So, if you still like to do it, I'm not saying don't, but I personally, when I get on stage, I don't see a difference, and it's more injections and it's sometimes more pip, and I just don't want all that.
Yeah. The only thing I like to keep short acting is trend, to be honest.
Yeah,
Because
Trend 8.
yeah, and this is why
I do.
I ask because there was a point that I was never pulling out the testosterone, but then I realized if you are going through the whole 2016 or how many weeks you've been on the longer esters and you've been on, for example, 500 mgs of test, you are not on 500 mgs of test. You're probably on 7, 800 even maybe.
Like a
So
half life.
even if you pull it totally 2 weeks
Just
out,
so
you're probably still on 200, 300 mix of tests to the stage. So for those guys who are worrying about just not spinning themselves for the 3 days, you don't have to be worried about that if you are on the longer esters, because the pharmacodynamics of the ester is gonna actually work uh, for your doing a favor. So you don't have to worry about that. So this is the question that I have to ask properly, because the limitation of my English is probably gonna fuck it up. But how 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 long before the stage you are try to tell your guys to level up the water intake, sodium
Yep. Let's
intake,
talk about all
and
that.
all the mineral intake, because this is something that's
So
really important.
I'm big on sodium intake throughout the prep. I'm going to have you adding at least a quarter teaspoon of salt to your meals, plus everything that's in your meals. Any condiments are okay. Here's another thing. I get the water up about at least, so you're always going to be drinking at least a gallon. And this guy, he's a big guy, probably a gallon and a half. When you're a week out, I'm going to tell you to add a half a gallon to your water. So if you're, let's say he's doing a gallon and a half daily, big guy, we're going to be 2 gallons a week out. When we get to Friday, I'm going to watch you. I do not just say, let's cut water because that's what we do. We watch what your body's doing. And if you're getting harder every time we eat and you just look fucking badass, I'm going to leave you on the 2 gallons. I'm not going to change you at all. And I'm finding with the Retatrutide that you can do that. I'm not pulling my water at all on my guys. I get them peeled. There's nothing to hold. Their cortisol's low because I didn't have to kill them. They're sleeping beautifully all peak week. They're not holding anything. I'm keeping the water in. I think coaches who just say, well, we're going to cut it because that's what we've always done, that's not coaching. You got to look at what the physique's looking like. So with Alex, who just did the 212, he drank like over 2 gallons on Friday and was peeled out of his mind. And he just kept getting better and fuller and bigger. So why would I say, well, because 3 years ago I had to cut water? That's not what I'm seeing now with you. So why would I do that? So it depends, but I do ramp it up to get diuresis going in case I feel like I need to pull some down. That way I don't have to pull a lot. Even a half gallon down should start the diuresis. But with him, I just let it roll. And with myself, I drank, I think about a gallon and a half before stage, before I did Tampa. And I even did probably about 3/4 a gallon before I got on stage. And I just kept getting better and better. Just kept getting
Great,
better. Mhm. Yep.
great. Okay, so
I
I'm
am
not
not
gonna.
afraid of water. And I think coaches who pull it hard, if you have a really gifted athlete, really round muscle bellies, I think you can do that with them and they're still going to show up awesome. If you got a guy like me who wasn't really born to be a bodybuilder, he needs all that water and fluid in there to look as full as possible. And I just think with everything we have at our disposal now, you can do that now. So why wouldn't you? So a lot of times I always say I win because of my knowledge, not really because of my genetics. And so you need to watch with these new compounds, really what we can do in peak week. And I'm finding guys are just calmer. They're able to eat more. It's adding to the ability to peak an athlete, and it's making it easier.
So the next question is going to be, what about the sodium then? Because the water is full of the sodium, they says, and the one thing we have to add to that mix is diuretic use, because there's two approaches to that. Some coaches who are maybe not exactly understand the how the diuretic works try to incorporate diuretics and cut the sodium at the same time,
Everybody does.
or but there's a guys like, for example, Dom Kuza, who like to do that because he believes that diuretics actually are to pull the sodium. So leave the sodium in
Correct.
are actually gonna compare with the diuretics. So it's not a good idea, he says, to leave sodium, not cut it, maybe not totally cut it, but reduce it. That says like that when you incorporate the diuretics. So what's your take on that?
I disagree fully with doing the diuretic's job. Why would you take a diuretic and do its job for it? That's when people get in trouble. So if I use a diuretic, I use a little bit pre-bed Friday night, but they've been loaded on sodium all day. They've been loaded on water all day, and I'm just taking the edge off. Maybe a half of a tab of diazide. That's all you need. Remember, hormones are good and controlled these days. Everything's in a good spot. Cortisol's not spiking. All I need is a half tab. Dude wakes up peeled. Don't do the diuretic's job for it. Cutting water, cutting sodium, and taking a diuretic is a recipe for disaster. I leave the sodium the same all peak week. I don't touch it.
Okay.
I don't want a ton of variables. All I want to have to do is manipulate the carbs. And if I don't have to touch the water, that's one less variable I have to mess with. So I don't touch the sodium. I think it's a bad idea. I see coaches do it all the time, and the guy looked better on Thursday than he did on Saturday. And then when he goes and eats a freaking, cheeseburger or some salty ass Mexican shit, he looks amazing. Well, no shit. So I've been around this game long enough. I just know tweak the least amount possible. If he's looking better and better and better, don't just do what everyone does. Do what makes sense. So I don't think you do the diuretics job. I do like a little bit played that Friday night. If they've been loaded well, they've got water in them, they've got sodium in them, it only seems to make them just that nice level of crisp that you need. You wake up, they're just a touch flat. You get some food in them, get a little water in them, get a little salt in them each meal. If you really need to pull water back in the cell, I'll usually use a little potassium. I use like no salt. It's like potassium chloride. You just put some on
Yeah.
on the food. That'll start that sodium potassium pump. It'll pull that water back in, get the food in them. Boom, we're right on stage. So I don't do the diuretics job.
Okay. I wanted to explain the DOM because there's a problem that was probably a case, specific case to his one of his athletes for once, and second, that might be just misunderstood what he says because my English is really bad. So I don't want to tell that Dom is
Yeah,
doing that
yeah.
because I love Dom and I never speak with him personally, but I heard that on one of the podcasts he was in, and that was basically what I understand that he liked to use that approach with some guys. So that's why I just give his example here. But yeah, okay. So the next question is, do you or do you like to do the it's a clean carb up, or do you sometimes like to incorporate something like a junk food? And what is the pan on?
Generally speaking, I'm carb loading Friday before a Saturday show. There are occasions I'll do Thursday, and I will know this based on refeeding the athlete prior. So whenever we have a high carb day, I'll get pictures as we get closer to the show the next day and the day after and the day after. And most people look the best either the morning after or 2 days removed. So then I just time up when I'm going to mainly load them. But as far as junk, don't use it. I've seen it backfire way too much. I think junk is great if you've dried them off too much. Like in other words, you did the diuretics job and you tried to load them Thursday and you pulled water and you pulled sodium and they wake up like a shriveled raisin. Yeah, one of the fastest ways to get that physique back is go have a burrito or a big salty ass fatty carby meal. But then you got to worry about the bloat and all that. And I don't want that. So I don't like junk food. I don't like putting things in. I don't know how it's going to respond. I'm definitely not one of those guys like go eat a cheeseburger the morning of. None of that crap. I
Okay.
just don't believe it produces a great look.
Okay, so we slightly touched that, but I wanted to know what's your typical, maybe not typical because typical is sounds like a cookie cutter, but every coach has his like a perfect scenario for an athlete. We know
Mhm.
we both knows that it's the perfect scenarios are almost never happens, but let's say that this is a perfect scenario. So how do you like to incorporate the whole week when it comes to the loading? Because some guys like to deplete the athletes for
Mhm.
example, 3 to 4 days on a low carb, high volume, and stuff like that. And they like to first, for example, load the intramuscular triglycerides, just fat loading, and then maybe saturate the carbs. Some coaches do it totally like opposites. First carbs, then fats. Some coaches doing just fats, some coaches doing just carbs, some doing both. So, what's your like a most favorable approach?
So, used to, I generally would do fats first, and load that way, a little bit higher fat, lower carb to deplete. And then Friday would be a good bit less fat and more carb. That's how I always did it. Um, Recently, the way my athletes have been responding with all the new things we have, I've been kind of having fats kind of high. I haven't depleted them as hard. And then I don't have to load them as hard either, though. It's a lot more of a stable environment anymore. And that's just based on my eye and what I'm seeing. It's just one of those things where, maybe if I didn't have Reddin and have all these variables that are great and the cortisol's off and all this shit that we used to deal with, but I'm not seeing all that. So I've just been way more steady these days. I don't deplete super hard. Usually, if they're already down, let's say you get there at 300 carbs, I'm going to kind of hold that, maybe up the fats a bit and just let you cruise into that Friday. And then if we need 400, 500, 600, whatever it is, I'll keep the fat steady now and just bump your carbs. But a lot of times, I would get guys to peak week and they're on 100, 150, 120 carbs. Yeah, I would jack the fats up just to kind of hold that there. And but now, if they get in at 300, maybe I put it up to 80 if we're at 70 or 60. I just don't need to go to extremes, it seems like, as much as maybe I used to in the past. But yes, generally speaking, I hold the carb. They're already depleted. I get fats in a little bit higher. And then on Friday, usually is when I load, I bring fats back down, carbs go up. And we already talked about water and sodium and how I do that.
Okay, so we loaded me up, and this is the show day. I waking up, I'm maybe looking at a little bit flat because it's this probably normal for most of the guys there. They are kind of flattish in the morning. So what's now? How's your approach to the food
Yep. Question.
on the show day? Because some guys like to keep the diet steady, just get through the days like it was the day before. For example, John Jewett do that. Some guys just like to maybe eat a first meal and then nothing, or maybe just some rice cakes here and there to the stage. What's your approach?
So usually, on Friday, I will have been watching your blood sugars, and I'll use that to guide me on what I need to do next. So let's say in the morning you wake up at 82, by 6 p.m. you're at 100. Well, I'm probably not going to keep pushing carbs if you're trending the wrong way. If you're trending 82s all day, that tells me you're storing everything I'm giving you. I'm going to keep carbing you up as long as the pictures look good. So let's say, we had a smooth day. Your blood sugar stayed really nice and constant. I was able to get a good amount of food in you. I don't need as much in the morning, but I'm going to go ahead and get that fasted blood glucose. Let's say you wake up at 70. Well, that tells me you've burned through a lot. You're looking a little flat. I'm going to give you a bigger meal than probably any of the other meals that day because you can take it. Let's say you wake up at 95. I'm going to give you less carbs. You're not as insulin sensitivity as you started on Friday. So if I go with that big meal I had planned, you might start to look softer because you're not putting it out of the bloodstream into the muscle. It's still circulating. So I'm getting blood glucose numbers all along to guide me as I do things. So if you wake up at 70, big meal in the morning, minimal protein, minimal. I don't even care if you have any. It's going to be carbs and fats, salt, water. The next meal, if you're staying 70s, I might keep it a big meal again, especially if you tell me your digestion's good and you're hungry. You might say, I'm not as hungry anymore and I'm now on 85. Okay, well, if we did 120 carbs, let's take it down to 60, 70. See what your blood sugars are doing. That's going to guide me to what you need, also with the visual. But all these things should be taken into account because if you wake up and you're 120, you still haven't even stored what I gave you yesterday. You don't need more carbs. You might just need a fat meal and I give you a little protein for diuresis. So this is how I'm manipulating things and deciding moves, not just picks only.
Isn't that the high blood sugar? Isn't that indication more of a dehydration?
Can be, but remember, I don't dehydrate my athletes.
Okay, okay, but if you're seeing that his blood sugar is trending in the wrong way, do you give him more water, or do you think that it's more likely that something with his
For my
carbohydrate
athletes,
uptake?
it would be more likely it's a they've had enough.
Okay. Oh, okay,
But
okay.
other coaches who take their gallon, let's say they cut it down to a gallon or down to a half a gallon on Friday, 100% that could be dehydration.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
guy had 2 gallons, at least a gallon and a half, only a half a diazide. So if I hit him with that meal, and let's say it does go from 120 now down to 70, yeah, maybe that was some dehydration because I'm going to give him some water. But if it stays elevated and I gave him some food, that's more of him not loading and he's done. If I had 700 carbs the day before, he might not need much that morning. So, yes, if you're a dehydrator, if you like to cut water hard, if you're a big diazide where you give them one in the morning, one midday, one at night, and they wake up in the morning like that, yeah, I would say dehydration for sure.
Yeah, yes, because that was a method of Justin Harris back in the days. I remember he's doing that with his guys, checking the blood sugar to check how much of the dehydrated the athlete was. So this is why I asked about that. Okay, so let's says that I'm get off the stage, I won, but that was a Saturday, and on a Sunday we have, for example, in Poland we have that. For example, if I wanted to get my pro card, probably it's gonna be like regionals on a Saturday, and then on a Sunday it's gonna be a pro card battle, so like
Oh,
a pro
wow.
qualifier. So let's says that we have to or we want to compete in both of these shows. So I won my class. I won overall because I'm cool. And and you picked me very well. So I get off the stage. What now? If we know that I'm gonna compete tomorrow.
Yep. Well, I mean, we're going to assess you. This is going to be highly variable at this point. You'll at least probably have had at least a half a gallon of water up to this point, getting off stage, maybe a little bit more. Um, you'll probably at least had 300 carbs between, loading a little bit in the morning and maybe a little, bit stage. So, at this point, I'm going to go back to more whole food meals, get some protein in you, a nice, carbohydrate, and we're going to assess you. Are you starting to spill, or are you looking really good? And really, you shouldn't be starting to spill. But if you were going to do anything, we would assume that would be closer that because we got you up to that right to that point where you're,
Yeah,
where you need to be. So I'm going to assess it, and it's going to depend. Like I've had guys who have to go a next day and we got to switch to protein fat meals because they look a little watery. And sometimes to go on stage, I'll even use a little Anadrol. But we know as the day goes on, that could cause some water, right? It's pretty cool for like an hour, and then you might get water on them. So it's really going to highly depend. Like if you look a little watery, I'm going to go protein and fat meals. We're going to watch your blood glucose, see what's going, get it down. Maybe even, use a little extra retatrutide. But if you look amazing, I'm just going to feed you kind of some steady carbohydrate, protein, fat meals based on what you've been doing all peak week. We aren't going to need to load again. And then I'm going to get your water steady if you're looking good. I'd probably tell you to finish off the night at a gallon. That night before, because we already played one diazide, I find that you start to sometimes push back the other direction.
yeah,
So if you're starting to look a little watery more in the evening, I would check on you. I'd give you another half diazide just to pull that off. Some guys, though, like me, I can use a diazide Friday night and I still look dry as shit on Monday. I know that doesn't sound right because, the half is only so
half life.
long,
Yeah,
but I still look dry as shit. It's not till Tuesday on that I start to get watery. So when I did the Tampa, I did the Masters, but then the next day I had to get ready for the Open. I didn't need another diazide. I know my body that way, and I knew I was fine. And I got about a gallon of water in, started just eating normal meals, and then got up and kind of repeated the process that we talked about before. So it's really going to depend on how you look. And if I think you're looking watery, we're going to go protein fat meals and higher protein because higher protein will speed up diuresis, and we're going to try to get that off, and you just don't need any more carbs. So it just depends.
yeah. You mentioned Anadrol, and this is something that's like pre-stage or preloading orals. It's something that many guys do. But do you do something like maybe just right before the stage insulin load?
Yeah, let's talk about that. Yeah,
Yeah,
great question. So, if a guy is peeled, I'm not talking
yeah,
like,
of
your
course.
second show and
I am
you're
talking with you. Obviously, I'm peeled. Come on.
yeah. So now it is the guy's second show. They don't. There's some areas that never like quite. I'm talking bone dry. Yeah, you can use, especially if you're on Retta. I found that you can use about 2-3 IU's of insulin for your stage appearance, and you'll be fine. And in fact, it'll make you harder. And Anadrol, Anadrol, as we know, you can play with this with your guy. Like, so if I know we're going to use it, I'll have them take it while they're training. And then I'll be like, okay, well, when did you finally look watery? And usually it's like 2-3 hours later, guys start to say, I can see it a little bit. So we'll time it based on when they are good and when they're not. So maybe we need to get in about an hour before. Um, and just know that like you might have to play a little cleanup for the night show if you do that. But if you're peeled, usually you look a little better, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
um, by the night, it's just because you're a little fuller, you got a little more water, it's just everything. So yeah, I like it pre. I also like some Cialis or some Viagra with it pre. That'll hit quick and nice for you. So you get a little slim. I wouldn't go crazy. 2-3 IU's. 25 mgs of Anadrol is fine. You can go 50. He's a bigger guy, but for me, I usually just do like a half of the 25 and then a little Cialis or Viagra. And that's a great cocktail right there that will definitely put on a visual extra fullness for you for sure.
you
But like I
said,
said, guys, make sure you're peeled before you're messing with the Anadrol because there is going to be a little extra water to it, especially towards the end of the evening. And if you're kind of on that bubble, it's probably not going to give much visual anyways. You need to be shredded.
yeah,
It's like, oh
yeah.
yeah, I can see that hitting as I'm pumping up. So.
But you says 2, 3 IU's before the stage, or this is just
Yeah.
assessed from
Yeah.
before the training?
Yep, you can do two to
Because
three IUs. So like with your pump up meal,
do you try a little bit more or never?
I generally don't. I still worry about now you're at an Anadrol and Slin, and we know that there's usually a little aldosterone extra with Slin and use, and it can kind of cause water. Now you're on an Anadrol. So I usually just use a little 2-3 IUs.
Okay.
I'm some guys might be able to get away with more, but I'm generally a little precautious and just use 2 to 3 IU. And I found that with the Anadrol and the Cialis or Viagra, it's a definite visual improvement. So I usually do. Back in the day, I would use Rice Krispie treats to pump up and do this. Every once in a while, you'll get a guy who said it hurt his stomach. So now I've kind of been just doing rice cakes and jelly with some salt and about 10 ounces of water, and then those PEDS. And you can just see someone pump up. It's like you're putting an air pump in them, assuming they're not
Yeah,
flat. Now, if you're flat, nothing's going to save you with that pump up. You'll see guys sitting there keep trying to pump and
yeah.
nothing's happening. But my guys are never that flat and they're never that dehydrated that doesn't hit pretty good and pretty hard.
Yeah, I'm asking about the protocol because that was something that I learned from my previous coach, Luki. He's a great coach, by the way,
Yeah.
and he was the first one who introduced that to me. And
Okay.
since then, I've used it with my athletes with a great success. This is something that it's really, really great if you can and if you know how to utilize it correctly. It is something that could literally be a game changer for all of those guys who are looking for the miracles during
Yep.
the peak week. That might be actually something that's really pulled you in the last hours of your competition. So that's something that's really but this is only for advanced users because this
Correct.
is something that could be dangerous as fuck. Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so what in case of competing back-to-back shows? For example, we are competing this week, and the next week
Yeah.
I have
Yeah.
to compete again. So how we approach the diet throughout the whole week, and how do we pick again?
Yep. So this happens a lot. So that night after the show, I'd like you to go out with your family, but get like a steak, a sweet potato, white potato, something like that. Hydrate well. So I want you to calm down and relax, but this is not the time to go out and hit a pizza and, tons of dessert. You're going to have to get all that off. And we got to get, usually, like I said, I'm pretty darn good at peaking guys, and they're going to be right on the cusp. So there's going to be a little water to you by usually Sunday, Monday, and we want to we got to deplete that. But I don't have to put you back on the bike and get hit cardio in there and all that shit. So just have a nice meal that Saturday night and get back to it Sunday morning. Before you leave the hotel, I want you back on your steps and your cardio, then get on your way to home or whatever you got to do, get right back to it because we got to redeplete. At that point, water goes up. If I feel like you're a little watery, I'm going to bring your carbs down, usually 60 to 70 from where we're at. Get that off you, and then again, fats come back up, and then we get re-depleted is what we do. And some guys don't have to get that depleted because they burn through shit so much. Like myself, I'm true ectomorph. Another guy who's meso, a little bit of endo in there. You might have to pull 60, 70, maybe even 100 carbs for a few days to get that off. I'd rather do it that way than put them on the hit because that's going to potentially impact the legs. So the answer is it depends. There's a lot of this, but like that's kind of where my mind is at. We got to get redepleted. We got to get the water off if there is any. Assess the physique, get them moving again, get them stepping again, get them training. But again, RPE is probably about an 8. We can't go back to training to failure because we got to get ready to do it again in a week. So that's where my mind goes and getting it to back to where we need to be.
Okay, and then probably in the middle of the week, if the water goes out, we start to pick again like we do the previous week. Yes.
Yes, it just all picks back up like the previous
Yeah.
week. The one thing I
Great.
didn't say was about training. Like by the final week, I do have your RPE come down to about an 8, and then usually I have you train like a circuit on Wednesday and Thursday. This is all for a Saturday show. So we just hit your upper body, maybe 30, 40 minutes at an RPE of like 5. A lot of posing. Just pump the muscle, nothing to failure. Lay off your legs for a week, and just kind of move some blood. That's it. And then Friday when you're loading, I love a lot of posing. I get a lot of pictures. Posing after each meal will drive it where we want it. So I'm a big fan of that, but I'm also a big fan of your butt better be in your hotel room or your house and chilling. I don't want you out sightseeing and walking around and on your feet. You'll have these guys who've never competed before, and they
Yeah.
realize it, but you're like, you can't be out walking at the mall with your wife for 3 hours. Like you're just burning
Yeah.
through everything. Sit your ass down. You know what I mean? So,
A
uh,
little vacation before the
yeah,
stage.
right. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so okay, let's test that I'm finished my season and we are happy. But what now? What do you
Yep.
like to do with your guys? Let's says, for
Good
example,
question.
I've competed for about 6 weeks. I hit 4 shows in that time, so I am not like a very beat down, but I am not fresh and probably super healthy either. So, do you like to do health days right away, or do you like to use that period, for example, first 6 to 8, 12 weeks for something like a rebound? And if health days, how much of the health days is going to be? So, how much do you reduce everything? And if we're going to do a rebound, do you like to stay on the drugs, reduce it, maybe switch it up a little bit, change something? And what about the training as well?
Yep. All good questions. So, the answer is it's going to depend. So I had a guy who just did Tampa. He needs to get bigger. And he's all in. So we didn't go right into a health phase. We are going to take advantage of this window and grow for 8 weeks. We pull out the trends, we pull out the orals, but test stayed high, mastrin stayed high, GH stayed high, insulin staying in, and we're going to grow. And, but that's at the elite top level. You know what I mean? And so he knows he's got to get bigger. This is what he wants to do. Is it the smartest thing? Absolutely not. We've got some peptides in play, SS31. We've got some MOTS. So we've got some things, plus all of his, ancillaries to protect him. But it is not the smartest move. It's a risk reward thing that he was willing to do, and he asked if we could. Generally speaking, you had a good season. You put on a lot of off-season weight. We bumped classes. I'm going to get you into a health phase, man. That's just the kind of coach I am. but I usually will allow you to have a little extra testosterone for a bit, maybe 500 mgs, but everything else is coming out. Two, I use a GH, 500 mgs a test. Training, it depends how beat up you are. David, if you're feeling good, we might take a week just off or either like real light and then get back at it to see if we can put a little bit of growth into you with just that test and just having food sky high. I'm not a reverser, like here's 15 carbs, here's 15 carbs. I get the food back in you right away. Now within reason, like if you go super crazy, you're going to drive their blood pressure up. So, I mean, within reason, it's not going to be the
Yeah,
height of off season, but I don't sit there and just say, well, here's 50 carbs and starve your ass off.
yeah,
So a lot of it depends, man. But generally speaking, I like to get everything out and get more back into a health phase, and kind of, just get everything back in range, take some labs after 8 to 10 weeks, and then go from there. And then, obviously, once you're off stage and the dust is settled, we talk about what your weak points are, what needs to come up, and we make a plan around that, of course. I try not to talk about that like that same day unless someone
yeah,
asks, because, especially if, like, say you got a second. No one wants to hear right away what's wrong. And some do, and then we'll talk about it. But otherwise, I wait till you get back, check in with me, let's see where you're at, and then I point out all the things that weren't the best, and then we devise a plan to work on that. So,
yeah. From my experience, at least 4 to 5 days is needed to properly can look at yourself and assess what's really going on the
yep,
stage. Because
yep,
first off, coming off the stage, you are feeling either that you are a loser
yep.
or that you wanted to just simply
Ah,
get
yeah.
back to the work and be on the top of the world. So this is not the great time to talk about that stuff. So this is going to be a last question because this is something that we have to clear out the air probably. Do you think that the competitors sh supposed to or have to come off totally from
Hmm,
time to time?
good question. Um, Generally speaking, most of my guys cruise. I have a few guys who will say to me, I still want to have kids. And in that situation, I think a 4 week break, you're not going to shrivel up. You're not going to be, I mean, you're going to get a little smaller, but it's not the end of the world. Trust me. I'll pull them off for 4 weeks, hit them with some ACG, some Clomids, things like that, a few peptides that help, maybe some CoQ10, and try to, send them some real signals. But generally speaking, I usually get guys that are 35 and over. I don't generally pull them off. I leave them at 200. I feel like yo-yoing yourself is not healthy either.
Yeah,
If they really want to take a 4 week break, I'm totally fine with that. I don't see an issue with it. But I think going 8, 12, and longer and then being depressed and kind of down, I don't think that's healthy either. So I like more of a steady level. So I'm a big go ahead and get your TRT in and go from there. And again, at the higher level, some guys TRT is going to be double what a real TRT is to kind of hold their size
yeah,
if they're trying to get somewhere. It's just kind of where it's at and what it is. So yeah.
yeah, definitely makes sense. And for some of those guys who are coming off for the 4 weeks, let's be real, this is only for their mind because for 4 weeks you cannot even go off. So,
Nope. There's
but
still
some guys are just
5
needed.
half
Yeah.
lives that are coming down for sure. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I think we cover up everything, and if someone isn't satisfied still, they could easily use your email in
Yep.
the left corner and ask you for you become his coach, because probably gonna learn a lot more in the first week that you learn in this whole entire podcast because your knowledge is so it's probably undescribable at this point because you are in that probably longer than I even live. So
Yeah, I'm getting there.
thank you so much for your time.
All
And
right.
if
See
you
ya.
find some time in the future, I would really love to talk a little bit more about your peptide use because the peptide is actually something that I watch a ton of Hunter Williams, and he and Jay is actually those guys who are learn a ton from you. So
They're
I
great
think,
guys. Jay's
yeah,
friend of mine. So yeah, let's you just tell me when you're ready. You hit me up. I always try to make myself available.
Great. Thank you so much for that. And if anyone just stick with us to the end of this podcast, just go down in the description box below and find all the information about Jason and hit him up because he is the man.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
All right. See you,
Have a
David.
great day.
Bye.
Bye.
All right.